this show right now, this video, which I'm going to play through so you can actually see it and listen to it, to see how this is a microcosm of the macrocosm of all the fake news, all the so-called conspiracy theorists, all the mainstream news, the so-called agenda of the fake and real news and all that other stuff. Joe Rogan represents that adolescent mentality at its finest. He is the king of this show. And then you have Eddie Bravo, who is the extremist. And then you have the other guy who plays the innocent, sort of, I'm open to understanding what's going on, but yet I'm still going to play the role of whatever the fuck Joe Rogan says and thinks and acts and responds like. And then you have the ultimate extreme cognitive dissonant mind-controlled asshole. I think he was actually on Mad TV before. Bryan Cranston, I think his name is. He just plays the totally indoctrinated role of, I'm just going to say whatever the mainstream, whatever CNN tells me to say. So you have whatever CNN tells you to say guy. Then you have the Game of Thrones guy who's just about video games and the distraction world. Then you have the so-called entertainment media guy, which is Joe Rogan. Then you have the conspiracy guy. This is how the Eddie Bravo. This is how this whole setup is. And you, being a part of the Joe Rogan experience, you believe whoever you relate more to. And overall, more people are going to relate more to the alpha male, which is of course Joe Rogan, who his name is the show, and they're going to relate to the individual who throws his weight around and calls the shots. Now you have the Eddie Bravo is played as like, he's being played as like the Joker. He gets played. He's being played on this show. He gets on there to plant these seeds so they can so those seeds can be smashed. This is how Eddie Bravo is being used, whether he knows it or not. And I didn't even really realize this. I didn't even plan on coming at it from this perspective, but I see it now. This is how it's designed. When you look at Donald Trump being connected with Alex Jones, he's the president-elect. The so-called conspiracy theorist mind is the mainstream of today. It is the center mass thought process of today. And the old mentality is the Joe Rogan bully, sort of old school, I have a show, so I'm right. And I'm kind of smart and I can come up with these perspectives, so I'm right. And he plays that role to dumb down these stories, just like he's been playing the role to dumb down the flat earth realm perspectives, even though he was a proponent for the moon landing hoax back in the day, and so on and so forth. I wanted to shift gears from the whole moon landing hoax and Joe Rogan and all that stuff to give another example of how this algorithm of the Joe Rogan experience is actually working, and how it's playing out. And this video is a good example because it's talking about Building 7 and 9/11, and that's kind of like an old conspiracy theory. People already know about that shit. It's easy to understand. There's many videos, and you can see that Building 7 wasn't hit by a plane, and there was like a garbage fire in Building 7, and then it fell. And the mainstream sort of argument to why it fell is that some architects believe that fire brought that building down at near free fall speed. If you're just looking at it, you would automatically be open to question your reality. You'd want to know what's going on. You wouldn't automatically present an argument that is counter to that. Like, we're talking about people that have died. You're talking about a thing that's connected to so many other things. You're talking about something that's connected to so many different avenues and other storylines that pretty much validate all the other stories that Eddie Bravo really brings up on this show. So I'm going to play this and go along with it and just watch Joe Rogan's face. Listen to how he's responding. Listen to how deep Eddie Bravo has to go into explaining himself. Listen to the jack, the piece of shit mainstream media representative Brian, the just simpleton ass dude who is just, he's an arrogant, egotistical simpleton who plays that arrogant role of, oh, you're just a conspiracy theorist. What's right is what they tell us is right, and don't even entertain any kind of other theories other than that, Mr. Bravo. Don't even try it. And then you have the other guy who's just like, well, I'm just going to go along with whatever Joe Rogan says. And but I'm interested in what you say, Eddie, but I still think you're a conspiracy theorist. You're just a regular old conspiracy theorist dude. And I want to stay on the show, so I'm going to play the middle ground. But this is the mid-tone personality complex that gets put out there for people to believe in. Just like people worship and try to be like celebrities, what you believe in your reality is prepositioned for you by television shows like the Joe Rogan Experience and everything, like Ancient Aliens and the mainstream media and Alex Jones and TYT. They tell you how to think. They tell you how to act. They tell you what to believe. They tell you all these things. And Eddie Bravo is being played on here, whether he knows it or not. He's being played on here because he's brought on the show. And more power to him because he can hold that space. This dude is he's on it. He's very smart. He probably, I'm sure he knows it. He's a smart dude. But he says, I don't give a fuck. I'm just going to share this information because this outlet is available, and I'm just going to talk about this stuff because I know the people who are listening are going to research it on their own and not going to listen to these dumbasses like Bryan Cranston in the background and the other dude, and then Joe Rogan playing his, smart dummy role. Eddie Bravo is on point. So he's strong enough to hold that. He's a fighter. He's a warrior. So he'll fight. He'll hold that line because he's got the evidence to back it up. And the only other evidence, so this is like evidence against Joe Rogan, who is like ego evidence. It's just like, I have a show. I believe in whatever the mainstream storyline is. I can't veer too far from that theory. So, I'll let you talk about this stuff, but ultimately I got the last say on what's going on here. And you're pretty much just a quack. You're a fucking weirdo. And you can see it in his eyes. I'll try to catch it because I saw it a few times. But you can see it in Joe Rogan's eyes. His eyes change. Not in some like reptilian sort of thing like that, but his facial features change. He loses a lot of that. Like when he's on point, you see it in his face. Like he's on it. But you can see that skeevy little sort of like, I know what he's talking about. I know I could talk about this stuff, but I just can't. I'm not allowed to. He's not allowed to because he'll lose his platform. Or maybe he's paid to be silent. But I really just wanted to share this to give another example of how the overall consciousness is being played. And how these are good examples of how individuals and the collective is being played overall. It's an orchestra. The Joe Rogan Experience is one version of the overall orchestra that is maintained to dumb people down. So they have to entertain these so-called conspiracy theories only to make themselves the superheroes. Because, like Joe Rogan, nobody's going to beat the superhero on the superhero show. So if they villainize Eddie Bravo for being some crazy, kooky conspiracy theorist, he's already the villain. He's already starting out 5 steps behind the starting line. And overall, who has the last say? The man that's on the ticket. So, and all his lackeys that come on the show to back him up, like the guy that the so-called paleontologist that they had on there that was going against Eric DeBay's video about the dinosaur hoax and all that other stuff. Like they hire people to defend ignorance. Ignorance being the mainstream storyline of the control grid. So I'll play this and you can just watch, and I'll see how I'm gonna stop it or not. But so you can see how this stuff is being played out. They're doing this for you. They're doing this for your kids, these teenagers, these younger generation adults, to believe whatever it is that Joe Rogan tells them to believe.
Recognized suppression. Secret Air Force intelligence base making propaganda films in Laurel Canyon. All those bands, you can name them all. The Doors, the Eagles, Linda Ronstadt, all of them. They were all kids.
Let me ask you this. What would be the benefit?
Weird shit.
What would be the benefit the government would have with making awesome music like the Doors music?
Besides being...
See, that's the other. They already take that scene. Instead of entertaining what he's saying, now he's forced to defend himself. Now they keep pinning him in a corner because that's the only way that they can be right. The only way that they can be superheroes, Joe Rogan and all his lackeys that they invite to go against Eddie Bravo, and they're all friends, so it doesn't really seem like they're going against Eddie Bravo. But when you see overall the tone of the entire storyline, like the tone of the entire video, you can see how it's designed and how this is childish. It's adolescent, and they're not at all interested in understanding or even entertaining the idea of truth. They only want to entertain the idea of being right based upon somebody else being wrong. And Eddie Bravo is the man to consistently be wrong. And since he's speaking in reference about all these so-called conspiracy theories, then that's the intention of him to be on that show, so he can be wrong. So anybody else who represents these storylines, like the fake news agenda, Alex Jones, conspiracy theories, flat earth, and all that other stuff, you're automatically wrong. Why? Because the celebrities who represent you have already been on the Joe Rogan. They've already talked about that. They've already made a video about that. And Joe Rogan said that they're wrong and they're just a bunch of dummies. So with that tone, watch how that is played out through the rest of the video. They don't give a shit in trying to discuss and understand the possibilities that what Eddie Bravo, he could be onto something. Their only concern is if they're paid by the government, they're designed to keep him wrong and keep the discussion from going any further than the title. You can't go into the body of the information. You can only talk about the title. So they're talking about just to grab your attention and to keep you in limbo so you don't know anything. So since they never get to any conclusions, you don't get to any conclusions. And that's the intention overall of the Joe Rogan experience, is to leave you in la la land and dummy land, because even an intellectualist like Joe Rogan and somebody who speaks quickly like the Brian dude, who's just a dummy ignoramus who just believes in whatever the government tells him, and the cool guy who's kind of smart too, and he's just talking about whatever, like they never get to any conclusions because that's the intention of it. Just imagine if they would all put their heads together, and instead of the Joe Rogan experience, it was the Eddie Bravo experience, and they were all coming to put their heads together to try to understand and reach some conclusions rather than try to be right all the time. See, Joe Rogan on his show, he just wants to be right. Not so much for him to be right, But this dude is paid to maintain a level of consciousness that is based upon ignorance, so people don't think too far, so they don't challenge their reality. And since he's already in the past put himself out there to go into these kinds of topics, he can't turn back now. So they have to accept, like I said in previous videos, the system has to adjust to the level of consciousness of the people. Joe Rogan's already placed himself out there. Like they even referenced, I think in the video before, YouTube wasn't owned by Google first. It was bought by Google. Just like all these other, like Saturday Night Live didn't start out, the propaganda machine that it was. It might have had the intention to do that, but it wasn't in line because it could have failed. But as soon as it started to catch people's attention, that's when they started to implant those storylines to control the consciousness of the population. The Joe Rogan experience is just a microcosm of all that. And you can see clearly the algorithms of each actor in here, whether they know it or not, and how they are used to maintain a certain level of consciousness of the viewer.
Awesome.
I don't know. You tell me.
The government's awesome. Through to the other side. The government doesn't have a music department.
Dude, think about this. Jim Morrison's father orchestrated the Gulf of Tonkin.
What about your dad? What about my dad? I don't even talk to that fucking dude. Exactly.
My dad didn't orchestrate nothing.
That's what I'm talking about. That's what I'm talking about. Both of us don't even
cafeteria
talk to our dads. Why the fuck would you assume that Jim Morrison talked to his dad? I would assume that Jim Morrison is such a bad motherfucker.
He was close to his father.
Oh, come on. If you're close to your dad, you don't do acid. You don't pull your dick out in Miami and get arrested.
Look how he's not even looking at Eddie Bravo. He's looking at his backup. He's looking at the lackey that has to back him up because he needs his team to back him up against Eddie Bravo. So Joe Rogan needs to look at that other guy in the eyes to say, hey man, help me out, with all kind of little snickers here and there, any kind of quick little quip here and there, Brian in the background with a quick little quip. That's all designed to maintain a certain level of consciousness of the listener. And you can't really see it if you're just listening to the podcast on the satellite or so-called satellite radio. But since you can see it, this is how it's all designed. And overall, just keep paying attention to, look at his face. Look at how his body language and the whole thing. Look at how he's controlling the dialogue and creating a scenario where Eddie Bravo is automatically wrong. He's automatically crazy. He's automatically has to defend himself.
So legit point, guys with good dads don't pull their dicks up.
That was what I was just telling you. He was looking at him. He was not this guy. That he's just the dummy in the background. The other guy. He was looking at him to say, "Hey man, back me up," so he can have that laugh that just happened, that you just watched. So the laughter is actually, you win. If you're laughing at him, then you're the winner, and the information just gets lost.
Eddie, I hate to be a dick, but the other day, Brian was telling me how
now he has to back it up.
He thinks the whole 9/11 thing's just.
And then they play friends now.
Of course, he's on that side. He's on that side.
I love Eddie.
Like, no matter
I like
what,
Eddie so much that I never argue
no
with him.
matter what, he's
You don't argue with him.
You're the only guy I'm going to argue with.
I don't argue because I like Eddie too much. I don't argue. How many times I've said that on our podcast? I go,
He plays like CNN.
No, because I like him.
That's like the CNN
I would love to
guy.
believe the government and everything they say too. I would fucking love
No,
that.
I don't
So
believe everything they say.
No, I'm talking about Brian. He believes everything they say.
They're like intellectual meatheads. So this is the setup to the 9/11 talk, and I'll probably breeze through it because I want to keep this video short because it's just going to be going on and on back and forth. And I think I kind of want to catch these. I kind of want to skip through so I can catch like the different versions of styles of maintaining the conversation that they get into. And I really want to get to the Building 7 stuff because they pretty much repeat themselves. So you can see it. They actually play the video and so on and so forth.
So
No, I don't think he does.
no. Tell me one
Brian,
thing.
you don't believe everything the
Tell me one
government
thing.
says.
Tell me one big incident. One
He said he
tragic
doesn't trust
incident.
them.
No, he totally does because he trusts everything about 9/11, and there's holes everywhere. So if you trust watching Tower 7 completely free fall on video from 5 different angles, and you believe the government 8 years later when they finally came out and they said, it got too hot?
Yeah.
You believe that shit, you're on that side. There's nothing that's the litmus test. There's nothing you can say.
See, he's talking right now. Nobody's listening. Like, everybody's like acting. People know that
Tower 7 collapsed.
Joe Rogan's just walking around.
If they say yes, then I'm done. I'm done.
Well, that doesn't mean he believes all government.
That's another power move.
That's the worst one. It's on video, 5 different angles. There's many on video. Demolition experts looking at this and saying,
there are a lot of demolition experts that don't agree with that.
No, you don't have any video.
Scientific American did an amazing debunking all of your theories there.
Okay.
See how he's talking. Scientific American, it's amazing. It's the how he sets himself up. He just automatically shuts him down with his tone. Scientific Americans, no, you're just wrong. You're just wrong. No, it's just wrong. Don't even talk about it. There's no way you can even get into a conversation with an individual like that, because there's no openness. He's automatically closed off, and that's why he's on that show to play that. And now Eddie Bravo has to consistently barrel through all of that shit, when overall he's really talking about some basic shit like Building 7 falling, and how completely ridiculous the story that they're telling people to believe. It's ridiculous. You can listen.
Right. So you believe Tower 7 collapsed at free fall speed because it got too hot?
I don't know anything about.
Exactly.
I know nothing about that stuff.
Exactly. Do you know when they asked? Do you know when?
See, he knows nothing about it, yet he has the tone and the arrogance to shut Eddie Bravo down, who obviously has been researching this for so long. He knows nothing about it. But his tone, his ego, his arrogance gives him the power to be able to say, oh, well, I can dime in on this because I know one little thing, and he doesn't even know one little thing. He's just talking in response to.
Let me educate you a little bit. When they had a press conference, with NIST, the National Institute of Standard and Technologies, they're the ones that came out and explained what happened to Tower 7. When they asked them, did you guys check for explosives? Why didn't you check for explosives? It's really simple. It's like kindergarten shit. When they asked the head of kindergarten, why didn't you check for explosives? Why didn't you test for explosives on Tower 7? They said there was no reason to.
That laughter, that tone, the tone, look at the time. This is all desensitization. Eddie Bravo is talking about an entire fucking building that fell at free fall speed on one of the most emotionally charged events of this country. And it's being poo-pooed away with laughter and arrogance and ignorance. And there's nothing that could be said about that. There's no kind of response that could be made because of the tone of the conversation itself. It's just laughter. Oh, we're still talking about this. Oh, that right there is telling you that's a statement that says Eddie Bravo is just, we're still talking about that crazy shit. We're still talking about that stuff that's not true. Eddie Bravo is still trying to explain himself. It's ridiculous. This is the psychology of this so-called experience.
There was no witnesses. Meanwhile, there's about an hour of witnesses, firemen, policemen saying, bombs went off. Bombs went off. There's video of bombs going off. Bombs went off. Boom. And the guy said, we didn't check for bombs.
You hear all the background?
Because there was no
so the government,
eyewitness.
What about that,
testimony.
Brian?
So who flew those planes in the building?
See, he has to automatically shift. He can't talk about it.
It was remote control.
I can say to you, there's nothing I can say. I provided complete video evidence for you. I broke it down for you.
Here's the
and
problem.
you're still saying, that's still not enough. How much is enough? Nothing I can say to you.
Let me play devil's advocate.
I
haven't said anything.
They're all laughing.
How much?
What else do you need?
Let me play devil's advocate momentarily.
I'm
saying let me play devil's advocate momentarily. When you look at Tower 7, it clearly looks like a controlled demolition, right? It looks like the way it implodes.
I haven't seen it so
long. See how he looks at the other guy?
It looks like a controlled demolition.
Back
Is
me
it
up
possible that you could get a diesel fire in a building where the fuel burns so hot that it fucks up all of the supporting beams to this building and it all just gives out and pancakes on each other.
I'm not a structural engineer, so I don't know. That's what I'm saying.
I'm not a structural engineer, so I don't know. So, like, there's just... I'm not even...
This is what happens. There's 100,000 architects and engineers in the association, and one by one, it was like 200, then it was 1,500, then it was 2,000.
About that.
No, it's true.
You see that? He doesn't even know. Brian says you're wrong about that. Eddie, he says, look, there's thousands of people. It started with a few, then it got to 1,000 of actual scientists, architects, or whatever, who have said this is what's happening. Brian doesn't even know. Yet he has the balls to say, you're wrong about that. Why? Because that's how this ego, this arrogant ass ego mentality works. Whether they're paid to do what they're doing or they're just, their ego is paying them to be ignorant.
You're simply wrong.
Hold on.
You're simply wrong about
Let's watch it.
Fires made the building do that?
I don't know. I don't know.
Let me give you my feelings.
See?
Let me give you my feelings.
See, look at Joe Rogan's head now. Look
you
at
think the government are
Eddie's swaying me.
But you don't think that's fucking fishy? A detective would be all over that like flies on shit.
Let me tell you something. If that was my building, I want my fucking money back.
Me too.
See, he plays both sides.
There's some kind of hypnosis going on.
Eddie, who flew those buildings in the...
So he has to change it.
We're not talking about that. We're not talking about that.
No plane. There was 3 that went down, but the third one wasn't reported on because they knew the majority of the people, like you, real smart,
Joe,
would not even...
You heard Joe was on his side. Now he's gonna flip the script again and then go back to playing. This is how they play the fake and the real news with the so-called alternative news and the mainstream media and the so-called conspiracy theorists or the globalists and the Americanism sort of mentality. The same thing like Trump and Hillary. They play both sides so you get trapped in the world of illusion that they want you to get trapped in, and the information itself, that the implications of the information itself gets lost. So what Eddie Bravo is talking about, the emotion, the passion behind Eddie Bravo sharing what he's sharing, the research, the time and effort that he's put in to share this information, the other side of him being automatically known to be, he's going to be ridiculed. His whole personality is going to be ridiculed. His whole atmosphere is going to be ridiculed just by even speaking about this information, and he's just laughed to the side because of the ignorance of the collective mind control program. And people like Joe Rogan and Brian and Joe Rogan's little servant that's on there to just back him up, and Joe Rogan knows that. That's why he's on there. He keeps looking at him to say, hey, I need you to say something quick and funny and laugh to back me up so we can shut this down and shift the conversation back into whatever. This is all a control grid.
I like how he said real smart after he just shit on you.
Yeah, he just shit on you.
Yeah.
See, that's the comedy.
The fuck out of me,
Come on, 3 buildings.
Serious conversation.
3 buildings went down. 2 of them got hit by a plane. Didn't. A detective would be so all over. Lawyers would be all over that shit. Right. And you don't trust the government. You believe the government are criminals, but yet you got their back on this. That's scarier than the actual tower dropping at free fall speed.
But Eddie, here's the problem.
Like, how is that possible?
But Eddie, here's the problem. None of us really understand structural engineering.
See?
I don't understand what happens.
When he goes back.
No, exactly. But when you hear guys that do one by one,
but
when
not
you see,
all of them.
only
one.
Not all of them.
Scientific Americans
and architects
have their own point of
This
view
is
on it.
obvious that people are listening
if you
to
just look at
Scientific Americans bought off.
When you look at what's going on, like when people look at what trends.
It's about the information. It's about actually discussing this stuff because this is important information, not so much about the event itself, but what this event, the implications of this event, and the implications of this information that's being shared. This is why this is being poo-pooed away.
trend that's going on. The trend is there's 100,000 architects and engineers in the association, and bit by bit it's growing and growing. Because you know what? The guy that's the head of all that, he's sitting down.
Wait a minute. What are you saying? There's 100,000 architects and engineers in 9/11 Architects and Engineers for Truth?
No. In some club? In the Association of Architects and Engineers, there's a national association. There's
2,500.
There's 100,000 of them.
Well, and 2,500 plus.
No. There's
since
100,000. 9/11. No. That's different. 100,000 in the whole association, not including 9/11. They don't give a fuck.
I know. I'm saying it says 2,500 think.
Brendan, why did you start?
But is it 20?
Because Joe Rogan had to take a piss and I was lost.
Look, Brendan, you're a smart man.
See?
It's the same thing. Hey, Brendan.
Just follow him.
Brendan, it's the same thing. It's the same thing that we were talking about before. It's the same thing. It's the same thing in everything. It's the exact same thing. You could look at it like, hey, let me ask some questions. Out of the 100,000, did these 2,500 come from the 100,000 being shown the evidence and only 2,500 believe it? Or were only 2,500 shown? Does that make a difference? Does that make a difference in your whether you jump? Of course it does. So the reality is the 100,000 don't even know. Most of them don't even know.
So now Joe is going to come back to shut it down because now he agrees. His servant agrees with him.
One by one, it's growing and growing.
So now Joe will shut it down. Or Brian will come in.
Holy shit!
See, there it is.
That's what's going on.
But Eddie,
and then when Joe takes it back,
it's not what's going on.
And then when Joe takes it back, see how Joe and Brian start talking at the same time. They got to take that power back. And then when Joe and Brian take it back, then the other guy, the guy who just goes along, he doesn't think for himself overall. I mean, he does. He's an intelligent dude, but his design, his character, his role that he has to act out in this Joe Rogan Experience show is to go along with whatever the status quo that is sent out by Joe Rogan. So he has to play. It's up and down, up and down. They give Eddie Bravo a moment and then they take it away. They give him a moment and then they take it away. They give him a moment and they take it away. And then at the end, they just take it away. And then that's it. And then that's what you're supposed to believe in.
Eddie, anybody examining the evidence is going to know 3 towers went down. Everybody knows 3 towers went down.
Most people don't know 3 towers went down.
No, when
that's
you're talking about artists, architects,
and
engineers, you don't think the predominant group of art.
See, and this is the other thing. This is another tactic that's used to speak about 2 different issues. Joe Rogan is speaking on the issue of people knowing about building about the 3rd tower going down. Eddie Bravo is talking about the overall understanding that most people don't know that a 3rd tower went down, including these architects that Joe Rogan is talking about. So they're talking about 2 different stories. But since Joe Rogan is in charge, he trumps the entire conversation, and his ego trumps any kind of conversation, then you just think he's right. But they're actually talking about 2 different things, and it'll take them a while to get through it. But Eddie Bravo is talking about the fact that not many people even know that Building 7 went down, that a 3rd building went down. And then Joe Rogan says, well, how could you say that when... Are you saying architects are just dumb? They don't know that a 3rd building went down? That's not what Eddie's saying. He's saying that most people overall don't even know that, including these architects. So I'll just let you listen.
If you looked at 1 million architects and engineers, you don't think that like 999,999 would fucking know that Tower 7 was brought down with Tower 1 and Tower 2?
Can I talk? Just because...
Sweet laughter.
It's like I just dominated the conversation.
Can I go?
Oh my God.
Just because...
What did I just say? Does that make sense?
Yeah, just because you're an architect and an engineer and you're registered... nothing. And you're registered in the association.
Hold on.
Just because you're an architect and an engineer and you're registered in the association doesn't mean you have you're privy to extra knowledge on 911. Because the overall knowledge of 9/11 is most people don't know 3 towers went down.
You're
That's
right.
an actual...
Yeah.
You think they're going to talk to them about 9/11 and not bring up Tower 7? That's crazy.
Most
that's
don't know about it.
Eddie, that's
they don't know about it. They can covered it up. They can research it, but
nobody covered it up, Eddie. Nobody covered it up.
You don't get to that level, Eddie, without research and shit.
Hold on, Eddie. It's not covering up. It's just there's so much going on that day that Tower 7 seemed less important in comparison to Tower 1 and Tower 2, which were both hit by planes.
And more deaths.
See, look at that face. See, he plays that role. He's like, oh, Eddie, come on. The real reason why people don't know about Building 7 is because it was such an emotional thing that 2 towers went down on 9/11 that, you know, we didn't have time to look at Building 7 and how or why that went down. Come on, Eddie. You're being irrational. That's the victimization role. These are tactics to control you. And then he looks over to his support man to back him up, back up what he just said, his emotional outburst, to shut down Eddie Bravo and then set the tone for the next control grid. And then Brian, the ignoramus in the background, he can't speak on any of this stuff because this shit is just so far from his... he can only do little sound bites, because if he at all entertains this conversation, he will be shut down automatically. In fact, Eddie Bravo shut him down in the beginning of this video. But this was a good point, and I'm glad I paused it right now, because you can see Joe Rogan's face. And people believe this shit. Why? Because they believe in this meathead ass person only because he's got a microphone and some headphones and a TV show and he's been on TV and so on and so forth. People worship. This is idol worship. And everything that comes out of these idols' mouths is believed as the end-all, be-all. And Eddie Bravo is out there just like the fake news mentality agenda is out there to be beaten down to create superheroes. Joe Rogan is the superhero. And they play he plays a strong role where he says this really intellectual information and he shuts people down with intellect, and then they'll every now and again they'll play the emotional role, and you know, it was just that everybody was so sad that we didn't realize that another building went down. But Eddie's saying, what the fuck are you talking about? Stop being a fucking pussy right now and realize, yes, we understand that 2 buildings went down. But if you understand that a 3rd building went down without at all being hit, or it's highly suspicious on why that went down, then that actually sets the tone of extreme suspicion on why any of the fucking buildings went down.
Whatever it was, it didn't, whether it was an intentional cover-up, Tower 7, or it was a cover-up because there was so much hoopla, most people don't know about it.
What?
This is what's going on.
But so what? So what?
Richard Gage is
so what?
Eddie, why would you think that architects don't know?
See, he has to jump back. He shut him down. Like, Eddie doesn't even know how to respond to that because of what he just said. And how smart he knows Joe Rogan is. But Joe Rogan just played this crazy ass, just like, what the fuck card by saying, so what? So what? Like, what do you mean, so what? Now, outside of this radio show, what the fuck do you mean, so what? After what I just said. Like, I'm gonna replay that. And then he says, that's the tactic. That's the psychological tactic. Then he has to jump to another topic because he's the man in charge. So if he says, let's go back and talk about this other topic, you have to go back and talk about that other topic. But what gets lost is what he just said. So let's listen to what he just said and then hear Joe Rogan say, so what, so what? And then quickly change the subject. And look at Eddie Bravo's face right now. He has to totally recalibrate because he had the entire crew just like locked in to just be like, how could you not see this as at all suspicious? And then boom, Joe Rogan says, so what? Like, what? Let's listen to what that, how he got there.
on that day that Tower 7 seemed less important in
because
comparison
of the media.
to Tower 1 and Tower 2, which were both hit by planes.
And more deaths.
But whatever it was, it didn't, whether it was an intentional cover-up, Tower 7, or it was a cover-up because there was so much hoopla, most people don't know about it. This is what's going on.
So what? So what?
Richard Gage is his
Why
name.
would you, Eddie, why would you think that architects don't know?
See, switch. He went from cover-up, the government cover-up, and the topic itself, back to this shallow-ass architect discussion so he can maintain power over the conversation. And since he's in control of this show, Eddie Bravo just has to adjust. And that topic of cover-up just gets lost.
Engineers don't know that.
I don't know what they don't, but what we do know. This is what we do know. We don't know. You don't know. I don't know. But what we do know is when they sit them down, they say, "Oh shit, I didn't know there was a third."
Maybe. No, Eddie, come on, man. Come on, man. That's not true. You don't know that that's true.
That's what Richard Gage tells me.
See, they went from cover-up to a different conversation just so he can maintain power back, so he can say, "Oh, come on, Eddie, come on, you don't know. That's the tone that they want on here." So they want you to go from cover up to come on, you don't know. When actually Joe Rogan has zero response to the cover up discussion that Eddie brought up. This is why he had to change it back to that simple ass architect talk, because it's something tangible they can grab onto.
Crazy about this. You're getting so emotional.
So now you're crazy. Now you're emotional.
Like it's not a part of our lives. All right. And you don't know what they knew before.
See how he keeps looking at him?
The Tower 7 collapsed because they got.
See, he keeps looking away, and this is not us. He wants to play the victim. It's not us. This is the government. Look how uncomfortable Joe Rogan keeps getting in here. And you can see, and he's looking for backup, but he's not really getting it.
Do you think that's what I think?
No, I don't know.
Do you think that's what I want?
See?
I think that's what I want?
I don't know what.
I don't want to make
work.
a conclusion without having any facts. But when I look at Tower 7, I say, Eddie, not true. It looks like a
expert
controlled...
testimonial. It can be used in court.
See?
There's plenty
Look
of
at that
expert
face.
testimonial.
What does that
That
mean?
kind of shit can be used in court to prove a case, and there's plenty of expert
He has no
testimonial
response.
on video.
He has to
about
keep
9/11.
putting.
there's also expert testimony.
He has to keep pushing Eddie Bravo in the corner. He has to keep pushing him in the corner. And it doesn't even matter what Eddie Bravo has to say. It doesn't matter. As long as he's in the corner, he's the bad guy. And as long as he can be bullied and pushed around and laughed at, he's always going to be the guy who lost. He's always going to be the villain. And that's the design of this whole program.
That the diesel fuel from the tanks in the basement.
Show me that.
Show me the other shit.
Say that it is, but there isn't.
Well,
see the difference between how Eddie Bravo speaks and Joe Rogan speaks. Joe Rogan says what's being told to him by the regularly accepted storyline as if it's straight out of the Bible, pretty much. But Eddie is bringing up topics for discussion based upon evidence that is just obvious. See, there's a difference between evidence that is obvious by what you feel from your observation and your just like basic intuition of how this looks because you have no connection to it, as opposed to what Joe Rogan just said as there's all this evidence to say this and That's the difference here. But since that is the status quo of how conversations are made in the mainstream overall, then that's the winner. That's the overall winner.
Show me
how many architects.
Send me a link after this. Telling you.
See how he keeps looking back, looking around? Because he has nowhere to go.
And I can send you links.
See, now he has to bring. Now they have to bring Brian, since Eddie has been dominating that conversation, and they haven't been able to get a word in because they don't know how to dominate his basic conversation and just honest questioning this reality. Now they have to go dive deep into the ignorant zone with Brian because Brian makes Joe look like a fucking god, and his arrogance makes Eddie look like a total fucking idiot. And then the sidekick to Joe Rogan looks even smarter because he's actually more open to discussion than the arrogant idiot Brian. So this is the role he plays.
Yes, we're crushing.
And he's just gonna change.
You're talking about some links that don't exist. You're talking about proof. You're talking about proof.
What are you talking about? He's looking right at you.
There's something
Shab, you are a fucking denier.
Yes, this is a game.
Right at Shab, and Shab hasn't said a word.
Shab is a motherfucker.
I'm too hot.
That's how they can control it. See how it's now them three? Now they control the conversation through laughter, through like this team. It's like, you know what? Now where's Eddie? Eddie's talking about some serious stuff. Meanwhile, these assholes are in the corner laughing at him.
You probably think 9/11 was committed by motivated Islamic
And the intention was to change the subject and create a subtle, like, empty tone so that the leader, Joe Rogan, can come back and take charge of the conversation and switch the whole conversation up and create the dominating idea, the dominating reality.
We should take this time to address all the nerds out there that feel disenfranchised, but all this violent testosterone induced yelling and screaming.
Damn it.
We love you too.
See?
We all love
He's
each other.
the daddy.
We love everybody.
Brian, you didn't say a word.
And Brian,
you don't have a dog in this fight.
Brian has some thoughts on this.
I won't get
Brian,
involved.
just wrap it up for us. End it here.
See, wrap it up.
I just think it's amazing that Eddie has the inside scoop when every major publication from the Guardian, from left and right, from the New York Times to...
See, that's why Eddie just shuts him down immediately. He says, "You don't know shit. Your defense is you don't know shit." That's the only thing he can list off. The New York Times, the Huffington Post, MSNBC, and all these other assholes out there who are known mind control. They're known to control people with this bullshit, which they have spoken on about in other shows on the Joe Rogan so-called experience. But look at how arrogant he just says it out. He just puts himself out there, and Eddie just shuts him down immediately. You don't know shit. And then the two guys have to defend the arrogant, ignorant dude by saying, "No, let him talk, Eddie." Like, no, he's not talking anything. He's just throwing his arrogant ego around to make it look like he knows something. And Eddie's basically telling him, you don't know shit. You have nothing to add to the conversation. You only have arrogance.
To Lawrence Wright, who wrote a Pulitzer Prize winning book called The Looming Tower that actually traced...
Don't you fucking quote people, you son of a bitch. Time Magazine, Newsweek, they've all been bought off by the Illuminati or the government. And Eddie's YouTube and his inside scoop has the truth, and all the rest of us are fucking wrong. And I want to thank Eddie for being who the fuck he is, because he's a national treasure.
We're all friends.
The guy. And that's my argument.
I love you too.
I do love him. I love Eddie's a good person.
And you know what?
Eddie's a good motherfucker.
Listen, I want to
need your access,
I want to believe the government. I want to get on that government side. I want to get on that government side.
About things that you're not exactly sure about. And when we talk about these things, it's a better approach to step back and go, what are the possibilities? And how much do I have invested in one particular argument that I've already
the only reason I go to Tower 7 is because that's the most obvious one. That's the litmus test.
Eddie,
that's the most obvious one.
It's fucking curious for sure, but it's not obvious because neither you nor I is an architect or an engineer.
But
it's obvious that it looks like a controlled demolition.
That's the design. It's like you have to be that's the design of the scientism community. You have zero intuition. You have zero feeling. Everything that you interpret in your reality is based upon what the university system tells you. If you're not an architect, if you're not a structural engineer, then you don't have the ability to have any kind of insight on understanding this. That is the way this entire system gets shut down. And Joe Rogan and his lackeys are planted out there to maintain that he plays the dominant role, but he is the submissive role to the scientism mind control program. So he is dominant in his world to play the middleman between you and the overall dominating so-called Illuminati, cabal, big brother mentality, globalist mentality. His design is to be submissive to that program while being dominant over any other thought patterns that challenge that design. That's the role of Joe Rogan. That's the role of this experience.